Hey guys, welcome back to the Indy Sooner. It's your boy JP of the JP and Trav Show, and I got the homie Trav to my right. Trav, how you feeling today, man?
I'm great. It was a great day for Sooner Nation. There's no doubt about that. A lot different than we think we'd be sitting here, back from December. So,
Oh, that's absolutely true. And below us, we have the man, the myth, the legend, Sam Mays, the Sam Mays podcast as well. Sam, thanks for joining us today, man. How you feeling?
Man, I'm feeling excellent. Thank you guys so much for having me. I've always tell people I'm an outsider in this whole thing, but I'm one of the few media members in the country that has the ability to cover this Oklahoma football team from top to bottom. And it's a roller coaster. There are thousands of men and women across the nation that would want to be sitting in the same seat that I am, able to sit in that press box that I do every single season. And just kind of watching this whole last few months unfold has been incredible. We're watching college football history happen, right in front of our eyes. It's been pretty wild.
Absolutely.
yeah, absolutely.
Absolutely. So hey, let's start off just with National Signing Day, right? With a little bit of recruiting. The Sooners finished with the number 8 recruiting class. I'm going to ask both of you, how impressive do you feel like this turnaround was, considering everything that happened? Obviously, we talked off air about kind of Lincoln Riley's shenanigans and kind of how he did Oklahoma. We all know that. We're no stranger to that. But Brent Venables being able to come in here on such short notice, build the staff he has, and turn around, what was thought to be left for dead class to the number 8 recruiting class. So go ahead and give me your numbers. How impressive do you think that was?
Tim?
Give me a 10, because not only was it impressive the way that he filled the class and really kind of answered some questions in the needs department, but he did it in a very blue blood type of way. Like, I never felt desperation coming out of the Oklahoma football program. Did y'all? I didn't. I mean, once they signed Dylan Gabriel, it was like, cool. So you got a quarterback that we know can play this game. And then they went out and found guys that they wanted, guys that they felt fit OU's culture, guys whose families they felt fit like OU in Oklahoma's culture. To me, this was exceptional. Not one single time did I feel like the University of Oklahoma's football program was out of control here or just reaching for scrapes or grabbing whatever they could. This is the class that Brent Venables in this moment, that staff, that Levy and that staff wanted, right? They got the guys that they wanted to bring in. Would they have liked a 5-star kid or 2? I'm sure they would have. But the reality is they got a top 10 class with no 5 stars. That's got to mean something, right? Like, that's pretty impressive feat by OU. So, yeah, I think it's a 10 out of 10 for me.
Yeah, I'll echo it. I mean, I don't think enough can be said about it, really. I mean, keep in mind, this class finishes higher than Caleb Williams' class last year, the 21 class. And that was supposed to be, hey, man, Lincoln's just big. Like, hey, we've got the anchor, the quarterback. We've got this, that, and the other. We've got him doing all kinds of other recruiting events and whatnot around campus before he got to campus. So to finish better than that, I mean, we dropped to 15th in the 247 rankings, and then all the coaches got on campus and they said, hey, we're just going to chop away at this thing. And I think what's really important is the fact that they kept so many of the recruits in the boat that were looking to go other places, or just had just other schools, obviously, courting them, because every other school said, oh, OU's demise, it's finally here. Let's go ahead and pluck all these recruits out of their class. And Venables came along and said, not so fast, my friend. We're Oklahoma here. So, and the most impressive fact is that he didn't backfill it with Clemson players. It would have been much different had he got a top 10 class, but it was just a bunch of guys wanted to follow him from Clemson. That's what was the most impressive thing to me.
Yeah, no, I completely agree with both of you. Like Sam said, I mean, you really have to consider what Oklahoma was left like, right? I mean, Trav and I were there on the front lines of the JP and Trav Show the next week after Lincoln Riley announced he was going to USC, and it was brutal, and we didn't know what was gonna happen, what was gonna come to Oklahoma. And as Travis has stated many times, I'm not sure if you've said this or seen this, but the death of Oklahoma has been greatly exaggerated. Many national pundits and other fan bases just think that everything's falling, the sky's falling in Norman.
Right.
And if you've been paying attention, that's just not the case. And so I'm going to be pleasantly surprised when people are shocked by the way Oklahoma performs next year and the year after. And I'm not claiming a championship, necessarily a Big 12 championship, a national championship, but I think we're going to be a lot more successful than people are assuming on the national scale. So I'm definitely really pleased.
Sam,
yeah,
Sam, how do you think this translates to on the field next year? How do you think this energy and the recruiting process, everything? How do you think that, as a guy who's played at a high level for successful teams, like how do you take this recruiting momentum and this just kind of buzz around the program, this positivity around the program? How do you think that translates to actually on the field?
Yeah, so the 2022 story is currently being written, right? Like college football season has already started for the young men and those coaching staffs that are on campus right now. The work is being put in. And it very much does have kind of a storybook feel to it, right? We have the catastrophe in the beginning of the book. Oklahoma's football program, like you said, according to national pundits, according to other fan bases, left for dead. Well, now, I tweeted this back in December. It's about the rise, right? For the Sooners that stayed on campus and for the 29 plus kids that'll be joining this football team on this ride for the next several years. It's the rise, right? And I feel like Oklahoma was far from being on their knees in this moment, but there's work to be done. And I'm just telling you right now, if they can find a way to have a top 25 offensive line, top 30 offensive line next year, Oklahoma is going to most likely win the conference. I mean, that's just the reality to it. Like, there's just dudes all over the place that are excellent football players. They've got great running backs and great receivers and an excellent quarterback, right? Their defense has bodies out there that 100% know how to play this game. And now they're going to be taught by one of the best defensive minds in the country. I fully expect Oklahoma's defense to be well inside the top 40 next year in all categories. Boys, that's all it takes, right? I mean, that's all it takes to be a great football team, is to have a top 40 defense. And if Oklahoma's offense can go out there and be top 15 or so, and because that offensive line and because that offensive run game is good, they 100% will have the ability to be Big 12 champions. They 100% will be in the line to get to a semifinal game. Like, this isn't a secret here, right? Oklahoma is full of excellent players, and now I feel like they're motivated more than ever. But it does come down to what they can do up front. It really does. And if they can find a way to bolster that offensive line and Smitty does his job, and they can go in there and figure out how to get to one of those top 25 lines in the country, then they'll be okay. If they don't do that now, this league, we all know the Big 12 is better than it was 5 years ago. There's no question about it. It will be tough in this league. Oklahoma State's going to be good next year. Baylor's going to be good next year. Kansas State is on the rise. Iowa State's still going to be there relatively. But they can find a way to get that line up to the standard that we know it to be in the last 5 years, right? Because we've seen great offensive lines at Oklahoma. This is the first time since I started covering this team 8 years ago that the offensive line wasn't a positive for the football team. Like, wrap your head around that. There's like a drought in linemen right now.
Mm-hmm.
The first time in 8 years. If they can get back to that type of play up front, it doesn't need to be great. It doesn't need to be a Joe Moore winning line. It just needs to be inside that top 25. They can do that, they'll be just fine.
Now, I want to touch on that. You brought up Schmitty and development and whatnot. How much can a body change in an off season? I mean, when it really comes to these offensive linemen, the talk was Wiley had slimmed them down, that you could tell just on film and just watching with your own eyes. They lacked the explosion, that push, that
100%.
violence. So that first punch strength, everything like that. And then when they went in to do the testing, it really showed that they lacked a lot of the bench press numbers that Schmitty wanted to see, all that. How much can that change really in kind of a mid-year and then spring, or is this a multi-year process where it takes to really change those bodies like that?
Oh, no. This is something that could happen in a season, no question. So my sophomore year in college, I want to say I put on almost 100 pounds in every one of my lifts. My body was just ready for the moment. And I'm the guy that's getting drug tested, 5 times in the first 2 months of the football season because I had gotten so much stronger in that year. Sometimes that's really all it takes is a committed program. These dudes are 365 now, and Schmitty obviously has a plan. To me, it's not the physical thing that's going to be the best part about this. It's the mental part of it. Because that year, I'll never forget stepping on the football field like I was weaponized. Like, y'all aren't ready for what I'm getting ready to do to you. You can't imagine how good I feel in this body. I can't imagine that those boys in Oklahoma have felt that way quite yet, or even understand what that feels like. But when you walk through hell, right, when you've done that, and when you come out feeling better than you've ever felt, looking better than you've ever looked, you step on the football field, you got a big old smile on your face because you know there's nothing that can happen on this field that you're not prepared for. So I can't imagine that they felt that good in Oklahoma in a few years, honestly, right? I mean, it's been a while since I feel like the conditioning program there was something that you could witness, you could actually see unfold for you. And even game number 1, I mean, think about the first games of the season the last couple of years, boys. Have you been blown away by Oklahoma's ability to just run rule teams? I haven't been. You know, they've struggled a little bit in the beginning. Those games should be cakewalks. You should be embarrassing those kids. I mean, you just should be. I don't care what brand you have and what target you wear in your back. That's a game that Tulane should have never. You know what I mean? They should have never. And the way they did it was in a real disrespectful kind of way. Like, we're just going to beat y'all's ass. Like, I was sitting up in the press box.
Yeah, they were tougher. They were
just tougher.
Man.
Yeah, I mean, I've seen fluky games where you get some sawed-off coach that comes in here and he's got a 3-quarterback system and they're all running, throwing the ball and running routes and dumb
or
shit
like
happens,
Army or something like that.
Yes,
Like,
absolutely.
Nobody
That
sees the
happens.
triple option for years.
100%.
Like, well, what do we do?
Right. Tulane doesn't come into Norman and just
No.
put foot to ass. You know what I mean? They
Yeah.
just don't. And that's what they did this year. So I can't imagine that Smitty won't have those boys feeling vicious by the start of the season. And that's what matters the most, honestly.
Do you think offensive line, I know we talked most about it, but because I think it's just a unit that we saw not at the level that we had seen in years of late. And Bill Bedenbaugh has made such a name for himself. I mean, Bill Bedenbaugh didn't forget how to coach offensive line by any means.
Absolutely not. Yeah.
And then you see guys like Orlando Brown testing so well PFF in the NFL. You see Creed Humphrey doing the same. And you see all these guys out there, and it's like, well, he still knows how to coach offensive line. Would you say that the strength and conditioning program benefits the offensive line more than anybody? Otherwise, if not, who's another position group where you can point to and say, hey, man, the Schmitty's going to completely transform this group, and you're going to be able to tell even more? Is it linebackers? Is it offensive, defensive line? What do you think?
Yeah, for me, it's offensive line, defensive line, and then I think the next group for me would be linebackers. When you see those guys, you know, now they're in their 2-point stances, they're evaluating the offense in front of them. They see the guard or center come up to the second level to block them, and they meet that guard or center, you know, in a position of power and feel comfortable being able to maneuver that person. Like, that's when you know that you've got some confidence in your linebackers, that their bodies are where they need to be. I think your edge rushers today also, you'll see a huge benefit of a strength conditioning program that just covers it all, right? Because you need size, but you need to keep your speed and flexibility. So, like, guys like Ethan Downs, like, I can't wait to see what happens to him over this next 6 months. I really can't, because either we're going to talk about him being one of the best edge rushers in this league next year, or we're going to be talking about his big, unbelievable bodied ass moving down into the 3 technique spot and playing there around 275, 280 in this next season as a real versatile speed guy. So the first time I saw Ethan, he was a senior in high school, and he looked like Clark Kent when he walked through the door. Like, what are you talking about? This is the 18-year-old. You know, he's a freak. I can't wait to see what Schmitty does to him. It's going to be unbelievable what happens to him in just a season.
Mm-hmm. I've always thought Ethan was a freak. I really have.
Yeah.
I think that he's going to be, and I said this a couple of weeks ago. I forgot who we had on here, but we were talking about, you know, our sleepers on the defense or our sleepers on the offense, and Ethan was mine, like to blow up into an All-American.
Absolutely.
So
I agree 100%.
Hey, Sam, real quick, I wanted to just spend 5 or so minutes, if you could, recapping just your background, where you grew up, how you got into football, you know, obviously your time at Oklahoma State, and just anything else you'd like to share just in general for anybody that maybe doesn't know your story as well.
Well, I appreciate that. So I'm originally from Youngstown, Ohio. My dad is 82nd Airborne, graduated from West Point, top of his class, was held the tackle for loss record at West Point until like 2016 and played nose guard. So Pops is the real deal. Speaks a bunch of languages. You know, he's a special man. There's no doubt about it. I'm super proud to be his son. There's no doubt. My family still lives in Northeastern Ohio. I've got a sister that's an attorney. My brother's still working up in the area, and it's that's a tough place to grow up. Youngstown kind of made me the way that I was on the field. It starts there in what used to be called the Steel Valley Conference. Bob Stoops played in that conference. The Pelini brothers played in that conference. So I'm very proud of my Northeastern Ohio roots, and I was for sure going to bring them to whatever school that I chose. And at that time, I was kind of recruited late. I went to the Ohio State football camp as a junior, and I ended up winning that competition, that offensive defensive line competition, along with Anthony Munoz's son. We go into John Cooper's office, and he looks at us both in the face, and he offers us grant money. We were like, well, that's not going to work. So Munoz went down to Tennessee where his sister was playing basketball, and my father and I sat down. We kind of looked at my options. Georgia Tech came in pretty heavy. Michigan State was there pretty heavy. Michigan actually came in pretty late. And I'm sitting there thinking to myself, it's about, at that time, there was no Pro Football Focus grading offensive linemen. So it was like, where can I go find the best competition? And that was a no-brainer to me. My family's football, they're like football historians. We love it. It's a part of our lives, as all of us. My uncles played, my dad played. We just loved the game, and the Big 12 was going to be home, right? It was Nebraska, and it was A&M, and it was Oklahoma, and it was Texas. It was too good of an opportunity, and Oklahoma State just happened to be the only Big 12 school that offered me. So I got to campus. I got redshirted my first year, and I kind of went running from there. I played in a few games as a redshirt freshman, but began my career officially as a sophomore. I was all conference all 3 years, all American my senior year, and I was going to be a relatively high draft pick for a guard, and then I ended my career in the Senior Bowl as I broke my leg. So it was a pretty devastating moment for me. I tell people all the time that I'm blessed that I never left the football field in my life, knowing that what was next, the next level didn't want me. Like, I remember my high school teammates walking off and crying because they weren't going to play again. Remember my college teammates walking off because they weren't going to play again. I've never in my life experienced the game in a way that I knew that I wasn't good enough to continue playing it. You know what I mean? So I almost feel lucky that I never had to go through that. Honestly, it's a terrible injury that ended my career, but it is what it is there. And, I came back to Oklahoma. I had 2 years of making bad decisions and dating crazy women, and then I kind of fell into the media. So I just kind of, worked my way up. I started doing fill-in work with the Animal in the late, I think, 2000, probably 2009, 2010. And then I got my own gig and kind of went from there. Yeah. So, and now what I do is I do the Sam Base podcast. I love every second of it. I cover a lot of OU stuff. Obviously, I try to stay as involved with Oklahoma State as I can be, but the fan base doesn't really embrace it because I cover Oklahoma, and I'm very proud to say that I cover Oklahoma. I can't imagine, like, there are media members right now. I want y'all to think about my last 8 years, right? I've been to a ton of semifinal games. I've covered 2 Heisman Trophy winners and a Heisman Trophy runner-up, not to mention the last 3 months. How many people want this job? Right? Like, I'm not going to, just because I went to Oklahoma State doesn't mean I'm going to not do this incredible job and have this incredible experiences. And it is what it is. OSU fans don't want to support me in this stuff. That's completely fine. I'm not worried about that at all. So, but yeah, man, I love the podcast. It's great. You can find it anywhere you find podcasts. You can find it on YouTube. We're doing the video stuff now too. And that's going to do nothing but grow. I'm going to get on this like fitness whole thing going on, my own Biggest Loser version here pretty quick. I'm gonna try to drop 100 pounds before next football season. So I weigh 400 pounds, bro.
No way.
Yeah,
Man,
I had to get on a cattle scale.
You big
Right.
frame though, like 400 looks a lot different on you than it would on me though. So.
Yeah,
God, yeah,
that's
man.
a big fat.
Yeah, so that's what I've got going on, and yeah, I love it, man. Love the radio. I do radio in Tulsa with John Hoover, who's one of the most respected journalists here in the Big 12 region, and yeah, life is good, man. It really is. I'm engaged. I got 3 stepdaughters. I got a couple of little kids of my own, and yeah, it's been good stuff.
That's awesome.
Nice. I get you have a unique perspective on it. How do you specifically feel with your late injury in an exhibition, if you will? How do you feel about people opting out of bowl games to protect their draft status?
Man, so I just love football. Like I love it. I love it. And I will never forget my agent looking at me before that day before that game thinking, because I had to go to that game and really kind of get back in the conversation to be a early second round pick, because when back then, so Tommy Harris had left, right? Dusty was suspended that year. Tank Reese, I think, was gone. We lost Marcus Tubbs to the draft. Like, so all my dudes that I had battled for 2 years graduated, right? So like the Big 12, I think it was Lynn Magruder at Oklahoma, who was a pretty good player, but he wasn't what those other guys were, and as far as notoriety was concerned, right? So I kind of fell off just a little bit, even though I was an All-American. So I go to this week of practice and just decimate all, and that draft stock, goes back up. My agent's like, man, you had a great week of practice. I got a bunch of people interested in you. Don't play in the game, is what he says to me. And I'm like, but they sent
I'm a football player.
They sent my pads, and like, I've been in camp like for 3 weeks now. So like I'm at the end of football season, your body is shit. It's in terrible shape. So you get done with that, then you go to your NFL, with your agent to go train. Man, 3 weeks into that, you feel awesome. You detox completely. Your body's healed up. So I was feeling just great. Had a great week of practice. Of course, I want to go play in the game. That was a mistake. So, I mean, I for the guys who want to play, I get it. So it's hard to turn it away. It's hard to turn it off. Like, you never want to turn, like, NBA players play 80 games in a season. They play 80 games of AAU basketball in a month these days. You know what I mean? I'm blessed to say that I played over 100 football games in my life. Not many people can say that. You know what I mean? Like, that's just the reality of this deal. So to turn down an opportunity was super hard for me. You got to take care of yourself. You got to take care of your family. You got to make your choices. I get why people opt out of them. I really do. But I get why some of those men decide to stay.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
It makes absolute sense.
So when you were offered grant money, did you guys just smile and say no thanks and walk out?
Yeah. Munoz's dad was hot. Like, he was hot. You know what I mean? Like, I knew that. I mean, I wasn't on Ohio State's radar until we went to that camp. I think I weighed in at 332. I ran at like a 4.95 or something. Like, I had a great camp. And so they were, pretty excited to talk to me afterwards, but it wasn't one of those things like I expected to get a scholarship offer in that moment. But Munoz was unhappy about it. Obviously his legacy is pretty amazing. Being an Ohio guy, like, we just knew he was going to go to Ohio State. So
yeah, man, that's amazing.
And then Cooper got fired for that, basically, too, right? Because there was always some kid from Ohio and some other team just kicking their ass. And they're like, why is this kid from right down the road? Why is he playing for somebody else, And so Munoz became an All-American, and I became an All-American, and it was a very weird deal that all those in-state kids were getting away from it. Then Tressel comes in, Meyer comes in, and their philosophy is, in the state of Ohio, our whole roster is going to be committed to these kids. So it's and I think Urban Meyer said the national championship game, he reserved like 65% of his class was for Ohio kids. So that means a lot.
Well, and I think you're seeing some of that now. Can you kind of speak to what you're seeing along the recruiting trail and with the offers and commitments and even preferred walk-ons or things like that of the OK preps? What are you seeing out there with how Venables is prioritizing the local kids?
No, I love it. It's the way to go here because of what we saw in the last 3 months. This is why this is so important, because this is not a game to OU fans. It's not a game to kids that grow up OU fans and become football players that are capable of playing on this level. Like, they love it. I will never forget hearing Trent Smith tell the story about the first time he put an OU workout jersey on. Right. And he's got tears in his eyes because it was a dream come true for him. That dude would have laid down on some train tracks for Oklahoma football. Right. So this is like, I had a guy on Twitter today come after me and said, oh, being a legend in Norman versus being a god at USC. And I'm like, bro, you don't understand what I'm talking about here.
No.
Like, USC, I'll give USC credit for an illustrious history. They've had some great players over the years. There's no doubt about it. But USA football is a fad. Right? It comes and it goes. And when it's here, it's a spectacle. There's no question about it. But when it goes, it's gone. Right? It is. And right now, it's gone. And so I don't that doesn't happen at Oklahoma. Even the Blake era, the stadium was 3/4 of the way full, and they got 5,000 people out of practice, and they're selling out spring games and or doing all the things they can to get around the team. Like, this is a lifestyle for Oklahomans here. It's one of the largest fan bases in the country, and they are passionate and they love their Sooners. There's no doubt about that, right? Like, and so for me to focus on those kids that have the athletic ability to play at this level, right? So they might be a star below because people aren't coming into Oklahoma recruit. The averages don't make sense. What are you getting, Trav? Like 24, 30 kids that are legitimate Division I prospects every year at Oklahoma?
Right now in the 2022 class, you've got 31 kids. When you go to like the actual state rankings of guys that are actually ranked, 31. So, and that's the thing. So much of the rankings these days is you have to go to camps. You have to send film. If you have a coach that doesn't send film off, I mean,
then you don't go.
So much of it is in the high school coaches' hands. I mean, you look at a guy like Robert Spears Jennings, who obviously saw one of the most meteoric rises in the history of 247 sports. I mean, you had people complaining, why are we offering this 3-star kid? He's no good. He's ranked like 1,200th in the country. Well, now he's a top 200 kid. He's like a top 150 kid. And he didn't give up a single reception at the All-American game. He ran the fastest 40 time at the All-American camps, like that kind of stuff. But his coach was like, hey, you're gonna play, and I've known Josh since I was in high school. He's like, you're gonna play offense. He wants to play receiver. Well, it wasn't until the playoffs that after OU had offered him as a defensive back, he still wasn't letting him play defensive back. Finally, in the playoffs, he's like, let me play both ways. And he was a beast. I mean, I was on the sideline with me and Parker Thune at the Union BA game. Quarterback gets loose. He comes up, and RSJ throws his block off and just sticks the kid. And we could feel it on the sideline. And I was like, why the hell wasn't that guy playing defense all the time? But things like that can affect your ranking. It can affect your offers. It can affect all that kind of stuff. So when you extrapolate that out across not only the state of Oklahoma, but the entire country of coaches that might just have, diamonds in the rough, but they aren't doing their part. And that's why it's so important. You saw the whole Oklahoma staff go out and visit all the schools. They said that they hadn't seen an Oklahoma coach in years come visit them. Well, now they're getting in the doors, and that's inexcusable. So they're coming in the doors, and they're saying, hey, you know what? It's good to see these guys again, because they're going to be recruiting our players, and they're going to be so much more motivated to work 100%. With those coaches. Hey, we kind of want to see this kid at a different position. What do you think about that? Blah, 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 right? So, and why wouldn't you listen to college coaches, especially at some place like Oklahoma, like, hey, we're recruiting this guy to play this position. Why the hell do you have him playing in a different position? So with that, and then, that's so much where your recruitment goes, but especially with the SC stuff, and this is probably the only time I'll touch on Caleb during this process, but when you saw the Instagram post, and my argument has been for a long time now, and I know I brought it up on this podcast ad nauseum, but there's a reason that teams in LA and Austin and Miami underperform their recruiting rankings. There's a reason that teams in Tuscaloosa, South Bend, Norman, Clemson, Athens do well because there isn't anything else to do in those towns but play football. If you notice in Caleb Williams' announcement on Instagram, I counted 20 in his graphic. That was him, and then it was surrounded by all this kind of stuff. 22 things in the graphic had nothing to do with USC football. You had Nipsey and Kobe and Ice Cube and I think Steven Spielberg, and the Hollywood sign and lowriders and all kinds of stuff. Will Ferrell, like stuff, 22 things, palm trees galore, 22 things that were in that graphic. And that tells you something. If you're recruiting with that, and just like Texas, recruiting with the brand, recruiting with the money, all this stuff. If you're recruiting with that, you don't think that your football team is good enough or storied enough, or your coaching staff is convincing enough with development to get those players, right? So you need more sales pitch, right? But then when they get there out to LA or into Austin, and the players aren't 100% focused on football, you can't get mad at them. You sold them all this other stuff. You can't all of a sudden say, "Hey, the LA is beautiful. We got all this stuff," and then when they get out there, say, "No, we need you to ignore all those things that we sold to you to bring you out here." And so that's why I think, especially at Oklahoma, it's what you do in Oklahoma, you play football. When you know what you do in Norman, you play football. You know why? Because you're going to go to the NFL. If you do it the right way at OU, you will end up at the NFL, and you will probably end up with some jewelry. You'll end up with some trophy, things like that. Because that's what we're here for. Oklahoma football. When you see their stuff, we might have a Jordan logo on something or a Jordan shoe, but there's football trophies in our there's football trophies, there's footballs, there's legendary players, there's that kind of stuff in our marketing because we want you here to play football. So I think that's a big difference in the story that you're telling your recruits, and that's why you see it happen every year. 5 stars go somewhere. Well, yeah, they're a 5-star. That more speaks to their ceiling than their floor. So when 5-star gets out there and they're like, "Oh man, this is really cool. USC Film School. What's up? Oh, I can go to these influencer things. Oh, the beach is right there. Sweet. Well, I'll see y'all at practice later."
I think there's definitely something to that for sure. I think that going back to Oklahoma players in particular, the local kids. Yeah, I think that everything that you just mentioned is kind of that community that they've grown up on, right? That football family that they've grown up on. I think Venables has been super open about how important the family aspect of this is. And when you consider where he was at the last 9 years under Dabo clearly feels that way too. So I think that, welcoming kids in from Oklahoma to your family that they really have been a part of for their whole lives is super important. And you know what else it does? For kids like me, right, from Ohio, having a bunch of guys on my team from Oklahoma gave me like 10 moms that I didn't know that I was going to get when I got here. And they were coming to campus on game days and they were checking up on me and they were making sure my room was clean. And I had moms coming and I would like clean up like my own mom was coming down because I didn't want her to be in there and to see my mess. Type of thing. So and when it was holiday weekends or bye weekends, I went home to Oklahoma kids' towns and hung out with them and their families and learned about the states and learned about their communities. And whether it was Weatherford or Fairview, Oklahoma, some real small little, I had my first chicken fried steak down in like Plainview, with Kyle Williams and his mom, so those are stories that I cherish. And I loved that my Ben Bowie from Broken Arrow, his family was great. So I loved those moments with them.
Bar and restaurant guy. He owned Sutures, and that was the bar I used to go to when I wasn't quite old enough to go there. And he reminded me that big people have feelings too. Ben Bowie's a great dude.
Great guy.
That's a hell of a name drop. That's awesome.
I'm here for all the Oklahoma kids getting opportunities for sure. I really am. I think that's what Tulsa football is missing right now. You see their class, it's all from Texas. I'm like, what are y'all doing? Yeah. It's crazy.
Yeah, and I think it's interesting because, Gentry Williams came home. His dad told me he literally dressed up Gentry Williams in OU gear to come home from the hospital the day he was born. Mm-hmm. There's not a kid in LA that's dressed up in US. I don't even think they sell infant clothes, but because it's familial. It is, and that's what I've loved so much. When you hear about Monica Evers talking and Miss Gibson and all these ladies saying we totally feel part of the family. It's legitimately, it's different. And people have even said when we got recruited by the last staff, it was one thing, it was all great. But man, this staff, it feels so much different. They understand that they're giving their young kids to these grown men to basically raise them. And at least in those very formative years of early college, So, no, really excited with the way, especially with the OK preps, with a lot of McCarty out of McAllister. You've got By Job and those guys getting offers, and just really excited stuff coming up. There's no doubt about that.
And before we move on to questions, the one thing just to piggyback off your guys' great conversation, as I'm just soaking in all the info, people just don't understand what it's like to live in Oklahoma, be from Oklahoma. I'm born and raised in Indianapolis, but my whole family's from Oklahoma. My whole family was in Ardmore. My dad's buried there right now. My mom graduated from there, went to OU in the 80s. So like I'm essentially Oklahoma and just was born in Indiana. They don't understand what it means to be part of Oklahoma football. So when you have like some of my Indiana friends, they're asking me, why are you so upset? Why are you still talking about Lincoln Riley? Why are you so upset? Why are Sooner fans so mad? And they're like, he could leave, he could do what he wanted. Like he didn't owe you anything. I'm like, okay, listen. It's not even that he left. And I told people that. I said, it's not even that he left. Now, we're not used to coaches just leaving us. But it's not that he left, it's how he left. Right. And it's
like
just
the audacity.
Yeah, the audacity and the things that we just continue to hear. Like I just thinking about it, like when Trav and I were talking about it, each week as we came on the podcast, we just talked about something new that came to light. Right. And then he pulls the stunt that he did today on ESPN. And it's just like, why would we not be upset? Like,
yeah, say
right.
the transfer portal needs guardrails. It's getting out of hand.
Yeah.
Dude, I think it's exacerbated in our view because we got Venables who refused to even recruit Jaron, who basically said, "Hey, I'm coming to enroll, like whether you like it or not." Like he was turned down. He said he tried to convince in his presser today. He said he tried to convince Jaron that Clemson is still the place that he fell in love with, and he should stick with his commitment. So I mean, he's trying to do that. Meanwhile, Lincoln's texting current players on our team and recruits to try and follow him out. It's like, I get that it's a business and this, that, and the other, but at a certain point, like I said earlier, you're trusting. Parents are asking these grown men, to guide and be the best examples they can be for their sons as they're away from home.
Yep.
Is there a parent in America that watches and pays any attention to college football right now that would say, you know what, I want my son to be more like Lincoln Riley than Brett Venables? Not a one. So obviously, this is going to hurt him down the road. But I'm just more excited about what we got going on in Oklahoma, because it's funny, because I think we all kind of, a lot of people are like, man, something's not right with the team. Something's going on with this, that, and the other. But now when we're able to take a step back and just be like, okay, let's be just 100% honest about this compared to what we're seeing in other programs. Super excited about the program moving forward. But this whole all coaches leave sudden. You guys need to grow up. Like, no, this was different. This was different. Like, and if you don't realize it's different, then you probably don't.
Well, I mean, this is Oklahoma. I mean, that's why it's different. Like that dude's he's from Muleshoe, Texas. Get the hell out of here. He's going to come to Norman and do this to Oklahoma. Are you kidding me?
Like that.
And Oklahoma made Lincoln Riley Lincoln Riley too. It wasn't
right.
This wasn't a coach that had been around head coaching positions and left for major this, major that. You look at it like, we made you. Like, we were an offensive coordinator. You're an offensive coordinator, and then you came here. We gave you the program. Now, in hindsight, we gave you the program a bit prematurely. But that's what's so interesting is, like, you do this to us. Like, I feel like Denzel, like, you do this to me.
Right.
Like, like I'm going training day on him. You know what I mean? You think you could do this to me?
That's how we all feel.
Yeah, 100%. And I think that's how you should feel. I was a little bit shocked myself, and look, let's not act like I trust that you two have high enough football acumen to understand the game enough to know that Lincoln Riley he's a damn good offensive mind. And that dude absolutely is somehow, some way. You want to talk about three totally different quarterbacks? He took Baker Mayfield, Kyler Murray, and Jalen Hurts and wrapped an offense around them that allowed them to all become 2 Heisman winners and a finalist. Like, that dude's specialty is 100% quarterbacks. And that's why, I mean, to me, I don't get the USC thing because I feel like the team is not good enough. Like, I feel like Caleb's going to show up there and get in the day one of practice and be like, oh, shit. Right? Like, because I just don't feel like there's enough infrastructure there to even support a player like him. I mean, Oklahoma barely had the infrastructure this year to support a player like that. Imagine what Caleb Williams looks like with a top 25 offensive line, y'all. Imagine what that looks like. right? It's unbelievable. Like, kid is a freak. I get why he follows Lincoln, though, because Lincoln knows what he's doing with quarterbacks. I do. It just seemed like he took for granted the stage that he was on, right? And the possibilities of coaching a blue blood into this next level of the SEC and bringing the Oklahoma brand there. Like, it just, at the end of the day, guys, he never believed in it. That's it. Because if he was truly an Oklahoma Sooner, if he had fully embraced the culture and he had fully embraced Bob Stoops as his mentor and he loved every second of it, this was his dream job, right? Which it is. I mean, 99% of coaches in college football would say a place like Oklahoma is a dream job scenario, right? If this was truly his dream job, he would have never even thought about it. So at the end of the day, it just wasn't. And that's probably the thing that probably rubbed people worse than anything, is like, you never really bought him. Like, I don't know that I ever really bought him, like, in his demeanor or attitude. You know, I bought that quarterback shit because he's great at it. There's no doubt about that. But as far as just when he spoke about Oklahoma and the way he went about it and the avenues and the channels that he did it, he was successful. But Annie Hansen was huge for him. And the multimedia team was huge for him. Because if you think of, like, look at how you see Brent Venables right now. Like, he's at the head of it, out front. All you see is BV and his words and how he feels about it. And Oklahoma, like Lincoln there was a charade to it. There was a presentation that seemed, it was like a movie. And it was a great movie.
It was guarded.
Yeah, it was a great movie,
yeah,
but it wasn't.
It was produced.
Yes, that's what I'm looking for. It was produced. What you're getting now is authentic, is real, authentic, die hard. I love this place. This is my dream job. And you believe it, because he left Clemson when he could have chased championships with Dabo as long as he wanted to. But he came home. He came back to New Orleans, a place that he believes in, and a message that he believes in. It just seems very real now.
Yeah, and I think part of kind of your point of he was never really bought in. Do you think it's because the shadow of Bob Stoops looms so large in Norman, still lives there? He's everybody's favorite. He's the dad that calms everybody down. He's still, he can walk through the offices whenever he wants. And he's won a national title, and he's in the Hall of Fame, so you can't say a damn thing to him about it. Do you think it would have been different had Lincoln got the job when Bob did? Obviously, the ages are completely different. But what I'm saying is, if maybe he would have come to a blue blood program, kind of like he is at USC, and trying to make it his own, if it might have been a little bit different, because I do think that getting out of Bob's shadow is something that Lincoln had to worry about. Whereas Venables is like, Bob, come here, brother. Like, we're boys, like, let's do this together, kind of thing. You know what I mean? Do you think that had a little bit to do with kind of the mentality of trying to take over for such a legend?
I mean, it could have. I think that the brand is, even the brand is bigger than Bob Stoops' brand. You know what I mean? So it's like, I almost feel like it's the expectation at a place like Oklahoma that you're coming into a support system that's going to be hands-on, right? They just are. Same thing at Ohio State. Right. Same thing in maybe not so much at Alabama, because that's his whole everything. You know what I mean? But even I'm sure, has resources that have Alabama ties that he could reach out to if he needed, some assistance. Like, this is Oklahoma. This is the show. So if you don't want to be a part of this show and have Bob Stoops and these other great coaches and Joe Castiglione is the best athletic director in the country. Of course he's going to be hands-on. Of course the Board of Regents and people in power at Oklahoma are going to be hands-on and involved. Like, what do you want to do? You want to go be somewhere by yourself? Go coach at Temple, right? Go coach someplace where you're going to be revered as the end-all, be-all. At Oklahoma, that's never going to be the case. There's not one coach, not one player, not one figure in the history of the university that is bigger than the program. And so if Lincoln Riley wanted to be that guy and he just wanted to be the guy, then he chose the wrong school in USC too, because they might not have the tradition that Oklahoma does. But I promise you, there's going to be a bunch of people that want to be involved with what's happening next at USC football. Like, this is the show that he signed up for. And it's almost like he bit off more than he was willing to chew.
One of the things that I'd been told by a former player that was a Stoops guy, and then but played under Lincoln and whatnot. He said that where he really struggled, that he felt, was he just didn't he couldn't play the CEO role. He couldn't be the boss. He couldn't manage everything. He was a little too meek. As the offensive coordinator, he could just handle his side of the ball, not have to worry about it. Didn't have to handle all the media. Didn't have to handle hiring and firing people, all this kind of
Right.
stuff. Didn't have to handle the accountability side. He wasn't being kind of held responsible for off the field issues or anything like that, and that he kind of shied away from that. That's what this player said. That was the most obvious difference between him and Bob. He felt was when Bob walked into a room, like it was very obvious who was in charge. Like when Lincoln walked into a room, he never really commanded that respect or did anything to earn it in that side of it. So I thought that was kind of an interesting perspective.
Yeah, I look, I could see that for darn sure. You're going from Bob Stoops to Lincoln Riley. It's got to be a pretty big culture change in the way they go about things. And I mean, Bob to this day, like I remember just covering Bob when he was down there coaching the Renegades, and I'm sitting in the front row of the media conference, and the dude's he's talking to me, like making a joke. I asked him, Coach, how's it feel to get your first win in Texas? And he said, now come on now, Sam, I always win down here in Dallas. And I just start cracking up, right? But like, Bob Stoops is like, as a player, Coach Switcher's the same way. As a player, I will always tense up around men like that, men that are revered in the game, right? It's an honor to be associated with Bob Stoops. It's an honor to have conversations with Barry Switzer. Those are great football minds. Those are legends of the game that I love. And so I look to those men and will always hold them in high regard, just like the players that played for them, just like the kids that committed to them, right? Even Coach Stoops' later, his freshman class, the year that he left, they committed to Bob Stoops, and they knew what they were getting with Coach Stoops. They 100% did. He never hid that from anybody. Like, this is the animal that I am. You're coming to play for me type of thing. Going from that to Lincoln Riley had to have been one hell of a transition, and probably one that as kids, look, guys, we were all young men at one point in our life. Tell me that we didn't sometimes look for the easiest route or appreciate the easier route. So I promise you, when Lincoln took over, there probably was a little bit of that, just I'm young and done, and I'm going to feel relieved by this because it's less stress, right? It's less intense. And look, the results were phenomenal. So even the kids on that team were like, cool, Link's got it going. He's got us doing our thing. And now we're a Jordan team and we're going to semifinal games and all those things. Like, even you can lie to yourself. Yep. Like, even those kids that have been there, darn well those seniors of that year that Bob left, darn well they knew what they were doing wasn't the right thing, or that didn't feel like they had prepared like they had in the past. They knew that. But, this is what's in front of us. This is the team that I played for. I'm getting ready to go to league in a year. It is what it is. But at the end of the day, I mean, we all knew in this moment now on this podcast, looking back, we're all like, yep, we saw it. We saw it happening, right? And the expectation here in a couple of years of here would have been what in the SEC? To be Ole Miss? Is that what the expectation would have been? Probably. So now the energy has changed and the attitude has changed and the direction has changed and the intensity behind it, the recognition of we're not good enough. We got to find a way to level this thing up, and we're Oklahoma and we can do this, and this is the reasons why we can do it. Those are all like the acknowledgement of the program. Texas has never acknowledged it. Since 2009, think about it. Has Texas ever acknowledged that they weren't where they want to be? It's always some bullshit slogan. Coming from the
ego.
Longhorns.
It's
dude,
too much ego.
Oklahoma's fan base is incredible because they were all like, "Oh yeah, this isn't going to work. This isn't going to work here. We know it. The coaches know it."
When you look at just a linear perspective, I think we talked about this earlier. It's Lincoln Riley's first year, Baker Mayfield's senior year, right? So you got Georgia, double, overtime classic. Should have won that game. Down. Next year is Kyler, double-digit loss to Alabama. Next year, starters Jalen, blown out by LSU. Next year, Spencer's the starter. We don't make the playoff, but we win the Big 12 championship. Next year, Spencer and Caleb, we miss the Big 12 championship altogether. It's an extremely linear, when you look at it like that, it's an extremely linear regression from a results standpoint. which is weird because we've been told, oh, this is Lincoln Riley's most talented team. This player also told me, he goes, which player that had a lot of hype coming into the season outperformed their hype? And it was like none. It was like we were supposed to say Benito be a first round pick. Perrion is supposed to be a second round pick. He's trying to play himself up into the second round in the Senior Bowl practices right now. He's been looking incredible, but that's the thing. You got all this talent and you didn't. It's not good whenever you see Trey Brown and Trey Norwood and these guys. They can't do much at OU. I mean, Trey Brown obviously had legendary plays and the biggest of moments. Trey Norwood was a ball, but they weren't first round picks. You know what I mean? So, but now they're starters in the NFL. So you had NFL starting corners on the same team, and you had the 118th ranked pass defense.
It's crazy.
It's crazy. With that kind of stuff, you're like, you had these dudes on the team. And then now, with Perrion absolutely destroying people in Senior Bowl practices, what if he goes out and just dominates? And you're like, man, what were we doing here? And that's where I think I've talked about this before, putting these new players, even you look at, 3 stars, 4 stars, whatever, right? You put these new players through, instead of the Wiley Riley filter or the Wiley Riley Grinch filter, you put it through the Schmitty Bates Brent Venables filter, and you're like, holy shit, that player's a heck of a lot better now than they were even a couple months ago, because we put them through all that, and that's been proven to develop at a high level. So that's what I'm excited about.
Yeah. Straight up. Hey, let's get to the questions portion of the show. Guys, go ahead and put some questions in the chat for any of the 3 of us. Obviously, we know Sam's our special guest here, so I'm sure you guys got loads of questions for him. So go ahead and put them in the chat. We'll throw them up here. Sam, I have one question I wanted to start off with just from myself. Give me your best in-game story.
Oh, man. You know what? This is gonna surprise you. I'm gonna give you probably this is the worst beating I took in college football. So I come in as a redshirt freshman. Jason Russell's the starting right tackle. He goes down in, I think, the first or second series, right? So the starting defensive end for that Missouri team was Justin Smith, who ended up playing in the NFL for, I think, probably 13 years, 15. I mean, all pro, incredible. He's a top 15 draft pick that season. And I had never given up a sack or a tackle in my high school career. So to this day, I'm perfect as an offensive lineman and knew it, right? I knew that I was perfect in games. And so I gave up three sacks and 2 tackles for a loss in that game. He broke a rib, broke 2 of my fingers and my nose, right? This is my first game. This is my very first game and so I come up to the end. Oh, wait, best part. It goes into overtime, right? It goes into overtime. So my beating gets extended by another 20 plays. And so we ended up losing the game, and I blame myself 100% for the loss. I'm in there. The best thing about being a second-team player, y'all, in practice is you don't practice, right? So imagine being a redshirt freshman that's a second-teamer and just not getting reps. I'd get, 16, 17 reps. I'm not doing the scout team stuff. You know what I mean? You just kind of hang out once you get into the season more than anything. And so I don't know the plays as well as I do. The guy that was playing guard next to me didn't talk to me for the entire game. The only thing he said to me was, he says, "You're ruining my opportunity. NFL scouts are here to watch me play." That's what the dude said to me. Yeah, at the guard next to me as I played tackle. But the thing that really sticks out to me the most is back then in now Boone Pickens Stadium, you used to cross. The teams would cross like an X, and there was a chain link fence in the middle that you could see the opponent. So I'm the last one up the thing. I'm dragging a leg, and Smith waited for me at that chain link fence, and he says to me, "Don't let this game define you." He says, "I'm a first round draft pick. I've been doing this forever." He's like, "You're going to be a great player one day. Keep your head up." And he gives me a fist pump through the chain. I could barely lift my arm up. I mean, that's how bad that he had beat me in that game. And I just remember going up to the locker room, sitting in my chair. I'm the last one out of the locker room. Luckily, my family didn't make it. They only made it to a game when I was at Oklahoma State, one of them. And so I had some friends, though, that knew football and so had kind of known that what I had been through, and they helped me across the street. I'm covered in ice bags. I laid down. I cried like a baby that night. Honestly, got in my bed and cried. Like, had no idea. Like, the next day on campus, that Monday, a kid walks up to me and he says, and he couldn't have been 6 foot, 165 pounds, just a normal average college kid. He looks at me and says, "You're Sam Mays." And I was like, "Yeah." He says, "Are your hands okay?" And I'm like, "Well, this one's got a couple of broken fingers." And he's like, "Well, I thought they were worse off because you didn't use them during the game." And I was, what? What? Like, that happened to me on campus, So I'm like heartbroken. And so finally, my dad, we talked to him and just taking the words that Smith said to me, I kind of rebounded that next week and went back to work. But that was like a huge defining moment for me as a college football player. Like, you want to be humbled? Like, that happened to me in one game. Like, my whole life changed in one game because of one player. And so, yeah, I'll never forget that.
Jeez.
Wow.
That's awesome. What an awesome story.
Good Lord. Just got worked.
Just got abused. Yeah. Just got
and
abused.
There's nothing you can do about it. There's nobody behind you.
There's nothing I could do about it. Yeah.
Like,
they could take me out, they would have taken me out. Yeah.
Yeah. Just keep on going and getting your ass kicked. Like, it is what it is, I guess.
I'll double up that one, a real quick one for you. That same year, I had to go in against Texas. And this is when Marcus was out there on the field, right? And he was so much bigger than me. I just remember getting in my stance going, this guy's he's a monster. And the first play of the game was like a 22 or like a 28 toss to the right. Tatum Bell's in the backfield. And I take the perfect steps and I get my hands in the perfect spot. My head's in the right spot. And, like that perfect fit as an offensive lineman. I'm like, hey, man, I'm doing it. I got this. I'm blocking this dude. Doesn't he grab me by my shoulder pads and throw me into Tatum for a 7-yard loss? What? I came off to the sidelines. My coach looked at me and said, "Son, you're going to be good at this one day, but you need to survive this game. Cut him for the rest of the game." And I was like, "What do you mean?" He said, don't put your hands on him again. You have to just throw your body at his legs before he kills you. All right, coach. Thanks for the appreciate that. Thanks for the vote of confidence. I get it.
Yeah,
I get it.
You're not good enough at this. So
he's like, you don't have the body, you don't have the strength. You're out here because you're all we got right now. I'm like, cool.
Oh my gosh.
Thanks. Man, the Big 12 back there was no joke. It was no joke to play in this league, for sure.
He's throwing in little digs like what's this guy does on Twitter after the games, the piss down your leg, making fun of your mama.
Mr.
He's like,
30.
He's like, oh,
That's
yeah,
funny.
Mays, you're too slow. You're not strong enough. You're not smart enough. I don't like your eyebrows. Like, you're ugly.
Right.
Like, like your shoes look stupid. Like, he's just like everything about you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, that's hilarious. Here's one we'll start off with. I know, Sam, you had mentioned it. I'm of the same belief as you. I got not hounded, but I had a couple OU fans come at me because I said, look, we're allowed to say that Lincoln Riley acted like a sleazebag and that we didn't agree with the way the Williams family handled their situation and still say Lincoln Riley is a great offensive mind and Caleb Williams is going to be a very, very, very good quarterback. Because for whatever reason, there are some OU fans that now want to act like Lincoln Riley always sucked, that now want to act like Caleb Williams is just average, and he was 5-2 as a quarterback, and he played bad against Baylor and Iowa State. And I'm like, yo, stop! Like, your bitterness is showing, dog. So,
right.
Do you guys want to try to look at this question, try to answer that?
For me, I would say I think there's so many moving parts here. I think that there's adjustments being made to coverage. Like, I would be lying to you if I thought that he wasn't out there making adjustments. if you're talking about just this season in particular, I would tell you that there were so many issues up front that the quarterbacks that were running those systems didn't really have time to do anything that they were out there supposed to be doing. I mean, that's just if Oklahoma's offensive line was any good this year, boys and girls, we don't know anything about Caleb Williams as a player. And Spencer Rattler's sitting at the Heisman Trophy ceremony this year because he's a hell of a quarterback and can spin the shit out of that football. But they didn't have an offensive line that allowed them to do anything and make any adjustments. And if Lincoln Riley had any faults for him, that he doesn't know. His experience since day one has been what up front? Fantastic. So
Joe
we just
Moore.
yeah, dude. So like we just get to this year for the first time for him as a 30-something-year-old head coach. Think about that. He's a 30-something-year-old head coach, and he's in his first season in Oklahoma when he doesn't have an offensive line in front of him. That is epic. So, yeah, I think across the board it looked discombobulated in the passing game for that reason alone. Quarterbacks aren't making the right decision. He's having a hard time making adjustments because the offensive line is failing him for the first time. I mean, I think that's all you really need to know about the situation.
Well, I think so much of it goes back to he had to run everything himself for once. It's different when you're the offensive coordinator, you're the play caller, and you're the quarterback coach. And you don't have to worry about who the strength and conditioning coach is. You don't have to worry about the offensive line doing their job. You don't have to worry about the whole defense. You don't have to worry about the special teams. You don't have to worry about how many timeouts you have. You don't have to worry about any of that in a game. And if you can only focus on play calling in a clean pocket all day, you can really play your whole hand, right? You can pull all the tricks. You can use your whole play sheet, right? But now, when you're still trying to call the plays, and yet you're responsible for everything on the field, up in the booth, everything like that. And you were in charge of getting this strength and conditioning program to where they could produce offensive linemen in the right shape and the right power and all. Like he never had to do any of that, so he can still be a great play caller and stuff, but I think he's a great play caller when all he has to do is call plays, and all he has to do is coach the quarterback. That's what he. Once you added on 10 times the job requirements, that's when all of a sudden he couldn't work out his offense like he wanted because there's so many other moving parts that go along with not only a head coaching role, but also just goes with play call that goes into a play call.
Yeah, absolutely. Here's another one. It says, Sam, what are your thoughts about head coaches who function as both the head coach and a play caller? Do you see it as a sustainable or an effective approach in today's college football landscape?
I don't necessarily believe that it's a sustainable way of going about it today. I think when you look at the amount of information that you're getting in real time from the booth, when you're getting to an offensive coordinator or to a defensive coordinator to process that information, to take notes on that information, to be creating a sheet that's for your offense or defense at halftime, with that information on it, but in a digestible way for your student athletes and a plan to get that to them. There's a lot of work that needs to be done, right? And you can trust your guys up in the booth to do some of that work for sure. But if I was a coordinator, if I was a play caller, I would want to be focused on just that job, right? I'll never forget watching Mike Gundy, for example, turn his back to the field. You remember this? Sitting on some sort of a box or something, turning his back to the field. Yeah.
He just sat down,
because he had to do the job. He had to do that job. That's just the reality of it. So, I think that's probably not a way to go about it in 2022 for sure.
Yeah. Here's a question for any of us, all of us can maybe answer this. We can all pick one. Maybe some of us will have the same guy. Who's OU's most underrated player and why? Trav, you want to start?
Oh, man. I think the most underrated player is I'm gonna take kind of an easy answer, but I feel strongly about it. It's Dylan Gabriel. All of the talk has been about Caleb this, Caleb that, and then Jackson Dart, the shiny new toy. It's almost like Dylan. This sounds crazy, but just how the internet and how human brain works. It's almost like Dylan committed too early after Caleb, right? It's like because Dylan was in the boat, and then everybody's like, oh, who's next? Who's next? Who's next, right? oh, this Jackson Dart guy. I got more questions in my DMs about Jackson Dart than anybody in this whole cycle. Hey, have you heard about Dart? What have you heard about Dart? What have you heard about Dart? Like, he was going to battle for the starting position, but he was going to likely redshirt. So when you look at something like that, you're like, Dylan's just been doing his thing, taking care of business, making sure that he's getting to know his team well, taking the guys out to eat, all this kind of stuff. And we've already seen him throw passes in Levy's system in a very successful way. I mean, we're looking at in his freshman and sophomore years over 7,000 yards, like 61 touchdowns to like 7 to 10 picks, somewhere around there. Passer rating of like about 158 average over those first 2 years. I mean, this is a kid that's had actual success under Levy, and he has a leg up in the Levy offense because he's the only one in the state that's run it. So he's going to be calling those plays, and I think he's got such an advantage in that I am so excited to watch Dylan really sling it because, I mean, Caleb Williams is an incredible player. I totally get it. Plenty worthy of the 5-star and the fanfare and everything, but Dylan Gabriel is going to light the place on fire. I'm so excited about Dylan.
For me, I think I'll go back to Weatherford and say Ethan Downs. I think that when you look at size, speed, agility alone, this kid is a prototypical, incredible football player. He's got all the ability to be excellent in every way. But if you watch him play, this is the best part about him. If you watch him play the game, he plays it like it's 1975. The kid doesn't know how to not run off the sidelines. He runs back to the sidelines. He's the first one out of the huddle up to the line of scrimmage. He's the first one back. He gets to every single ball carrier or tackler that he can. He's around the ball every single time. The dude I mean, it's hard to say anything other than like he's just a great football player, and he's just getting started. He plays the game with a tremendous respect. He's got a great family out there. And Weatherford, his work ethic will be second to none of the football team. I expect him to be every bit of what you expect out of a great defensive lineman. He's an NFL guy, in my opinion, 100%. I think he's a high draft pick one day. So yeah, it's Ethan Downs for me.
I'm of the same mind as you, Sam. I've said it on this podcast for weeks. I'm a big Ethan Downs guy. I mean, like you said, he's one of the Oklahoma kids, and he's one of the ones that grew up dreaming about playing at Oklahoma.
Absolutely.
And meant to work. And so he was one of the ones that even through some of the culture issues that, we found out about, the strength and conditioning program, what McGraw is doing, he pushed through that. And he showed out last year as a freshman. And now you're going to add Schmitty to him. You're going to add Todd Bates as a coach to him, right? I said in the bowl game, I said, look, write this down. In 2 years, Ethan Downs is going to be a first-round pick. I truly believe that. He just plays at a different level. His murder is insane.
It's insane. It is.
I'm looking forward to seeing him show out this year. I think that I'd love for him to get 8 to 10 sacks. That'd be pretty cool.
And a healthy Jalen Redmond's also going to be very exciting. That's a common answer in the replies. A healthy Jalen Redmond developed under the coaching that we're talking about. It should be scary as well. I mean, seeing what he did in a very limited production when he first got to Norman. I think he led the team in sacks, but he only played in like 6 games or something like that. And then, what he's able to do last year, obviously rotating a ton of time. And that's one thing, talking about time rotations. That's like what they talked about in Venables' press conference. Grayson, he's at, 6'4", 270, I think. And they said that he never came off the field. Like he just had that. I'm like, I mean, I've never been 6'4" or 270, but I imagine that I would get tired decently quickly. But they're saying that his endurance is exceptional at that size. So, and I think them saying that, I just don't want to see as many rotations as we saw last year. It really annoyed me to see. It was like hockey, full line changes. You'd see Benito, Redmond, Isaiah Thomas, Perrion all come out for like a 3rd and 1. I'm like, what are you doing? Like those are all your best defensive players. Why are you taking them out? Like, I get developing some depth, but do that in practice. Like, do that somewhere
Right.
else. Like I know there's no substitute for game time, but also, like, it's 3rd and 1. Like, go get this stop. You could lose this game. So I'm hoping that Jalen Redmond is able to stay on the field, be healthy, and really soak up the Schmitty and the Bates and the Venables and the Chavez,
Yeah.
like all that, because I think he's got a very high ceiling as well.
Yeah, I mean, I think Redmond could be a 1st-round pick. I really do.
Yeah.
Like, the thing that really sticks, if you watch Jalen Redmond play, all you need to know about him is in the first 2 or 3 steps, right? Because typically offensive linemen are the ones that are delivering the blow. Jalen Redmond is devastating to offensive linemen. He makes them want to quit after 4 quarters. And the rotation shit you're talking about, I 100% agree with it. I don't know. You don't allow those guys to put in the work. Like, being a defensive lineman today, it's an art form. So, like, if you watch the Bosa kids play right now, and they're great at this. If you watch TJ Watt play right now, they have so many different moves and so many different looks, and they're going to show you 2 or 3 of those in the 1st quarter. Then they're going to show you 3 new ones in the 2nd quarter. And then they're going to show you maybe another new one and go back to something that worked in the 1st quarter and the 3rd quarter. Like, it's playing chess here. And as an offensive lineman, you're doing the same damn thing. Like, I'm going to lay on you for 3.5 quarters, and you're going to be sick of it. And by the time I get into the 4th, every single time that I knock you down, it's going to take me 2 seconds longer to get off of you. You're going to be in pain the entire time you play that 4th quarter of football. Jalen Redmond is doing that to offensive linemen. He really is. And he's doing it with limited opportunities. I can't wait to watch that kid play next year. I think he could be great.
I compare it to a lot of how our wide receivers were used in heavy rotation. I compare it a lot to boxing. So, like, Canelo, in a couple of his knockouts, he's noticed that guys are ducking his hook, and he'll duck. One that almost always he goes to throw it, and then he'll uppercut because he knows he's been setting you up this entire time. So much like that, a wide receiver, I'm setting you up on a specific route over and over, but then you bite on that, that's a touchdown because I've been setting that up over and over and over. I'm putting in that work, and that's how, like you said, the defensive linemen, they're setting you up for that, that 1 3rd down that they gotta have. Like, all right, I've been setting you up for this whole time. Now I'm gonna, pull the chair out from under you, or I'm gonna, hit you with a spin move, like whatever, right? Like, but you don't get that unless you're getting the reps in to where you can set them up for those moves.
Yeah, 100%. Here's another good one. Realistically, what is the expectation this first season with Brent Venables and company? Just a conference run, a playoff berth. What can Sooner Nation truly expect?
I would expect a conference run for sure. It's Oklahoma. They made a conference run this year. They just came across a Baylor team that had to hit a different gear. That Baylor was the best football team in the conference this year. They just were. Like, there's, I think any OU fan that knows anything about football will agree to that. They were just a better team at this point. The Big 12 championship game should have probably gone Oklahoma State's way. But are we, at the end of the day, when you watch Baylor play, offensively, defensively, they just executed better. You got to give them the nod. They were the better team that day. I think that this conference is going to be tough again next year, and it all comes down to Oklahoma's offensive front. They can give Gabriel time to throw the football down the field and let those great receivers work. I think they'll be okay. If they can run the ball consistently, I think they'll be okay. And it's just that unknown factor. We just don't know because it kind of fell apart right in front of us. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know that I ever looked at Hayes and Robinson and just loved them. Like, that's just my personal opinion. I would have told you 2 years ago it would have been a struggle for both those guys to still be starting, right? Let alone one of them going to the NFL. So I think I'm kind of with Travis here. You said this a little earlier this year in that there's something to be said about the Schmitty change and maybe the potential instant impact it could have on that offensive line physically and mentally. So I'm kind of optimistic here, which typically I wouldn't be because offensive lines are not overnight fixes. Like, you gotta have Jimmys and Joes. Like, you can't do it without the personnel to get the job done. This is unique though, because I think the COVID year really caused a problem for them and just strength and conditioning wise. And I just think the Wiley system wasn't necessarily conducive to success with big guys. Because I think with little dudes, he was all right. You know what I mean? The skill position players popped at Oklahoma for years now. They've popped. It was, I mean, think about how Ramondre Stevenson looked. Right? Think about how all the other running backs look. Think about CeeDee Lamb and his body. Like I feel like the skill players excelled. I never looked at the offensive defensive lineman and thought the same thing though. You know what I mean? So I think they're as good. If you tell me they got a top 25 offensive line, I'm telling you that Oklahoma's going to win the Big 12 championship next year. But that's where they're going to have to be though, because this league is going to offer you some shit now. Like it's got something on the table, and it just hasn't in a long time. So I think we have to recognize that the conference has improved tremendously.
Yeah, absolutely. Travis, what do you think?
Yeah, I'm in the same boat. I think it goes through, Dave Aranda. I mean, it just comes down to, it's his conference right now. He had Lincoln Riley's number every time he played him. He's a great coach. There's a reason that he was mentioned with big job after big job. He won't be at Baylor very long. I'll tell you that much. They're gonna have to come up with, the Baptist Mafia is gonna have to come up with some money that we don't know that Baylor has. So it's I guess I just don't see a world where Oklahoma doesn't compete for Big 12 championship at minimum, because I don't know. It's been since I was 10 years old that they didn't. So I guess I need to see it. And I think the defense, just by the coaching alone, is going to be better. I don't think we're going to see the communication issues that we saw on the back end. Like players talked about how they struggled. If somebody went in motion, there was almost always communication issues. They never knew that. I mean, that was like, if your whole defense can be tricked by one guy going in motion, then ball that up and throw it away. So that's where you have to look at it and be like, okay, how much better can the defense get immediately based on just coaching? And I think it's pretty significant, personally. So again, we kind of got a little bit of a cheat code, and we've got this offensive coordinator coming in that's going to have a new team, but he has a quarterback that's already succeeded for 2 years under him. So it's not even a situation where, even if he were coming in and coaching Caleb, I mean, Caleb, has never played it down in Levy's system. It's tailor-made for what Dylan wants to do. That's why he followed him. So we're already going to have an advantage that you normally wouldn't see with a new coach when it comes to the offensive side of the ball. But then you've got, the last defensive staff combined for 0 national title appearances, and the new defensive staff combines for 13 national title experiences. That alone, the defense will be better. It's just there's no doubt in my mind. So I think at minimum we're in the Big 12 championship.
Yeah. No, I completely agree with both of you. Like we said kind of at the beginning of the show, there are so many national pundits and just fans of other schools that just don't pay attention. And I'm not saying I expect them to. So I don't pay attention to Georgia as much. I don't pay attention to South Carolina as much, even though we probably will be a little bit with Shane Beamer and Spencer Rattler and also starting over there now. But, they think we're delusional when we say that. When we say that we think we're going to win the Big 12 championship at minimum potentially next year. They think that no, you're going to go 8-4 at best next year. It's like, okay, you're not really paying attention. I think at worst that's what could happen. Like you said, Sam, if we don't have a top 25 offensive line, but if we do now, it's not like we don't got dudes still here, right? At the wide receiver position, we're still very loaded. At the running back position, we're very loaded, especially with Javonte Barnes and Gavin Sawchuk coming in as well. So, I mean, and like Travis, like you said, allude to your point, the defense is most likely going to be better because you just straight up have better coaches over there, right? Like, even if you don't want to throw shade at Grinch and company, the coaches we have on defense now are just flat out better, and they're proven to be better. And so hopefully we'll see that change kind of instantly. We'll do a couple more questions here, and then we'll let everybody get to bed so they can wake up and see the snow in the morning.
I can see right now.
Hey, are there any incoming recruits you see making an immediate impact next season, and who are you most excited to see? So basically, out of the freshmen, we can do transfers too if you guys want to choose out of the recruits the transfers and the freshman recruits.
For me, it's the two tackles, right? It's a kid out of Deer Creek, Sexton, and what's the young man from Vegas?
Jake Taylor.
Yeah, it's those two. I'm looking forward to seeing how they look on the college field. You know, I had a chance to cover Sexton at Deer Creek over the last couple of years, and you know that kid he's got grown man strength. There's no question about it. He's very, very physical, very, very nasty. Looks like he's going to be a commodity for Oklahoma here in the future. The Taylor kid, though, probably if I had to pick one, it'd probably be him. I feel like as far as ready to go right now, if they needed a freshman to come in and play. Maybe you bring him in at a guard. And if you guys remember, Drew Samia, I don't know if you remember this, but Drew Samia, I didn't know if he was going to be able to recover from what happened to him in that first Clemson game. Like they had some dudes out there and they wore him out for 4 quarters. And then they bumped him in the guard. Well, guard is naturally more protected for young players in particular. You put him in a guard position, even though you know he's probably going to play tackle one day. Let's see what he can do there, move his speed. He's a big body kid already. Maybe that's something they can do to help bolster that offensive line, at least get him some necessary experience this year, right? Because you have to assume you're going to have him for 3 or 4 years at that position. So if you can get him in and get him on that line right now, that would be huge for Oklahoma.
Yeah, I think we've already seen it in the comments, but Jaron Kanak is going to be a lot of people's answer because he's popping at with his testing, and you know he's a lot of people. I think the word freak is overused, but I think he's one of the ones that actually you can use it with. I mean, the dude's got high-end track speed, world-class speed at 6'3", about 230. He's got a 37.5-inch vertical he tested on. I think he did 275 on the bench press 11 times or something like that, and he's just the test numbers alone that Teddy and those guys are talking, they're like, it's eye-popping for a kid that age. But I'm going to stay in the trenches, and because you open this up to transfers, I'm going to say Mr. Jeffrey Johnson. I think that we saw what he did to Oklahoma's offensive line when Tulane came and played.
He was a grown-ass man.
He is a man. When I saw his recruiting picture, I didn't even see who it was. I just saw, you see a family standing with a coach. You're like, all right, I want to see what the athlete is. I look, and I guess it was his younger brother or something. And I was like, oh man, it must be a kid from down the 2024 or something like that. And then I looked to the left. I was like, oh God, no, that's the recruit. That's the recruit. And I thought it was a dad. It was a grown man. He was holding a Gatorade bottle. He's holding a Gatorade bottle. Looked like me holding this Carmex. I was like, he's just, and he had the boots on. I was like, man, I like this guy. Yeah. I think he's really, really going to step in and just be that big grown man in the middle. I'm incredibly excited about that.
Yeah, absolutely. If I had to choose one guy that I was particularly excited about, I would say Gibson from Florida. I think we haven't had size like that in a little bit. I think, to be honest, the last receiver I can remember we had that was that tall, at least, was Jeffrey Mead, and he never really did too much. He had
from Union High School, baby.
Huh?
Union High School, baby.
He never did too much besides that Iowa State game where you remember that he had those 2 spin moves, and that touchdown was pretty nice. But other than that, his career, never really panned out as much as maybe a lot of people thought it would. So I'm looking forward to see how Lebby starts to use Gibson in these next couple of years. But I think he could really see some minutes in this offense now this year, especially with the size in the red zone. We'll be able to see what he can do, and if Dylan can give him a couple of shots. But who knows? Our wide receiver room is loaded, so maybe he doesn't get a shot this year. But I'm hopeful that he'll get an opportunity for sure. So let's get one more question in here, and then we'll get rolling. This is a good one. Okay, we're getting on this one. What's your favorite beer?
I'm a Yuengling guy, man. Yuengling all the way.
Oh, you're such a hipster.
Yeah. I'm from Northeastern Ohio. I grew up drinking good beer from Pittsburgh, man. So sign me up for Yuengling any day.
No Iron City Light, no Icy Light or anything up there in
No,
Pittsburgh.
look, there was a time for that. There was a time for the Iron City, but I feel like at almost 40 now, I'm a little more sophisticated than old Iron City. Yeah, so give me and look, Yingling's in Texas now. I'm just crossing my fingers, hoping it's in Oklahoma here pretty quick.
Soon enough. It might be like the Fat Tire situation where everybody was so excited it got to Oklahoma that every bar and everyone, boom, got Fat Tire, and then nobody wanted it anymore because it wasn't unique. It wasn't tough to get. It wasn't rare, right? So
Right.
it lost a bit of the
Right.
shine. But Yingling is good stuff. So, JP, what's your favorite beer?
Well, I just to be honest with y'all, I tried to go. I have a lot of friends up here that love IPAs. I tried to go the IPA route. I can't do it.
Me either, man.
I try. I just can't. I'm a big Blue Moon guy. I like Blue Moon a lot. Especially when you put the orange in there. If I'm just at a regular bar, I might do Coors Light, but those are kind of my two go-tos.
Yeah, I got to shout out. There's so many Tulsa breweries doing so much good stuff. Right now, I'm just pretty heavily in Cabin Boys. My favorite recently is their Going Stag. Cabin Boys Going Stag. It's a Belgian single. So that's why they named it Going Stag, right? If you're going single, then you're going stag, right? And they actually have on the can, the wife does incredible can art. It's the best can art I've ever seen on beer. It's really cool, just a lot of pastel colors and stuff. Well, this one is a deer, but all of his like velvet has gone to the middle to create like a little fro, and he's totally like boogieing down. He's got the disco fever vibe. There's a disco light up shining. I mean, it's awesome. So Going Stag is definitely anything from Cabin Boys right now. They're putting out a lot of good stuff.
Good stuff. Well, I wanted to update everybody. I've seen some people asking in the chat. My wife is doing fine. She's just bored, really, just supremely bored. She works from home. Obviously, I'm not home. I'm an athletic director, so I'm super duper busy during the day. My administration has been great. Let me go home every once in a while to check on her. But other than being bored, she's fine. Baby girl is fine. Just being ornery. So just keep praying for that. We're at 31 weeks basically. So we'd love to get to 30, 38, 39, 40 full term if possible. But you'll see baby girl on the show, I'm sure at some point. Hey, I wanted to give both of you guys an opportunity before we head out, just to do some shameless plugs. Sam, love for you to do that for your podcast, and then Trav, he had a big announcement of the new company, what you got going on. So love for you guys to dive into that a little bit. Sam, we can start with you.
Yeah, man. Please check out the Sam Mace podcast. You can find it anywhere you find podcasts. You can now find it on YouTube. I've had some great Oklahoma guests. Wes Sims is one of my dear friends. Jason White's a buddy, and JD Runnels, Rufus Alexander. Like, we just love kind of chopping it out. And the podcast is going to kind of take some different paths here. It's a kind of a lifestyle piece, things that I'm interested in. We're going to have conversations about CTE. We're going to have conversations about cooking and just, fun stuff. My fiance is super involved in the things that we do. So as we kind of expand into this year, you're going to see some different sides of me. So I hope you guys can stay with me along the ride, and it's going to be good stuff. And then I'm doing this whole fitness thing, which is going to be great. And I'm looking forward to kind of changing my life in that direction also. So follow me on Instagram and at All American Maze there, and at All American Maze on Twitter. I'm on Facebook. I don't do a ton there. But yeah, man, I appreciate the ability to plug my stuff a little bit.
Are you in Tulsa, Sam? Where do you live?
Yeah, so I also work on the I live in Oklahoma City,
Okay.
But I work for the 97.1, the sports animal in Tulsa. I'm on the air every morning from 9 to 11 with John Hoover. So check me out there in the morning also.
Yes. Well, next time I am in Oklahoma, I'll have to check you out, man. See if we can get some.
Yeah, man. We got an app too. We got an app if you wanted to. The Tulsa Animal app. Oh yeah, you can just pull up. You can listen anywhere you want to.
Yeah.
So next time I'm going to quiz you. Have you been listening?
I will.
Yeah, right.
I will.
That's funny. Well, my stuff, I can't go too much into heavy details. We've got an exciting meeting this coming Friday. I'll learn more about what we can kind of share and how it relates to what we're doing. So what I can share is it's a tech company. It's a digital marketing company that is going to be heavily involved in NIL. I think personally, I've talked to Sam and JP a little bit about it. I personally think it's going to revolutionize the way that NIL deals work, how sponsorship deals work, things like that. I have a meeting with the deputy athletic director at Oklahoma, Zach Selman. I've got a meeting with him on Friday that will determine probably a lot of how we're able to work specifically with Oklahoma athletes on some of their stuff. So exciting times. It's only day 2 in the office today. So yesterday we moved in. Today we kind of rearranged the desks, got that all going on, and then tomorrow, who knows? Maybe I'll be snowed out. So, so a great start. So, anyways, hopefully next week, once we get a little more in place, I'm kind of transitioning from the restaurants a little bit, but I'll still retain all my ownership. But I'm super excited about it. Restaurants are my life work. So to get me to transition to something else, that should give you a good idea that it's something worthwhile. So
gotta be pretty solid. You've been working on that for a while. I'm excited for where that's going. And it's gonna be great, guys. He's not lying for sure. So y'all be on the lookout for that. Sam, man, it has been a pleasure and an honor. Thank you so much for being willing to come on today. And like I said, we'll have to catch up. My mom lives in Noble, so just outside of Norman. My sister runs track at Oklahoma, so I'm down there every so often. So I'll make sure to hit you up. We can meet in person. Maybe meet and try to
absolutely
grab a beer, grab some Yingling if they got it in Oklahoma by that time.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm looking forward to it, man. I appreciate it. You guys are great. I enjoyed this, and let me know anytime. I'll come back.
Oh, hey, absolutely.
Appreciate it, man. Thank you so much for doing this. Had a blast as always. And I'll talk to you soon, man.
Yeah. Thanks, guys.
Hey, be on the lookout, guys. We have more guests coming on in the next couple of weeks. We'll make sure we're announcing those. But yeah, y'all stay safe, warm, and cozy. Enjoy your snow days and tomorrow. We'll see you. Boomer.
See you guys.